Look at that face right there. That's me. I would say that's around 2001. I'm 3 years old in that picture. So 2001, of course, puts me at 19 years old. And the look on my face, that's a look of excitement and high energy. I think that's actually when I found out for the first time what the Pythagorean theorem is. And I'm wearing green. Green, of course, means go. And we're going to go right now into polynomials. And anytime you're learning something new, there's a learning curve. And with this unit of study right here, you're going to have a little bit of a learning curve. The vocab is new. It's going to sound like a foreign language. And right here, I've actually learned how to speak at this point in my life, but the vocab isn't as strong as it is today, and our vocab's constantly evolving. The more that you are reading books, the more that you're in classes, the more that you're socializing with diverse groups of people, the more words you can pick up. So let's pick up some words on this video. Monomial, that's the first word we're going to hear about. This prefix mono, you might have heard of the word monopoly. That's a board game. A monopoly is basically when you have one company that controls everything in the business. And a monomial, I should pronounce it correctly, is just a number or a variable or the product of a number in one or more variables with whole number exponents. So, an example of this would be like a to the second. That's a monomial. Or just simply the number 5. Or a combination of those things, 5a to the second power. And I could go on. I could even add a second variable here. We could say 5ab, and I'll put b to the second just for fun. Those are all monomials. Why? Because they represent either a number, like 5, a variable, like a squared, or the product of a number in one or more variables with a whole number exponent. So the other thing that we can do is we can look at non-examples. So something like this, 5 plus a, that would not be a monomial because you're looking at a sum now. It changes. So this is actually two terms when you have addition sign. These are all one term over here. Another non-example, I'm going to see if I can nail all of them here, would be if I have 1 over a, you can't have the variable on the bottom. And likewise, if I have 1 over a, you can't have, I'm going to do this down here, a to the negative 1. And the reason for that is that would actually turn into a fraction. And finally, one more to add to the list here. I'm just going to, I guess I'll park it right in between 1 over and a to the negative 1, would be 3 to the x. You just can't have a variable be the exponent for it to be a monomial. So these are all non-examples. They wouldn't be monomials. So we'll move along. But this definition's going to be something that you're going to want to have memorized. So what's a monomial again? You don't know. All right, make sure you're pausing the video. I really suggest making flashcards of these terms because every single form that you fill out this week is going to have to do with this vocab. Again, a monomial is a number, a variable, or the product of a number in one or more variables with whole number exponents. And again, this kid right here is adorable. I would want to babysit this kid. I was the type of kid that babysitters would line up outside of my house for the opportunity for my parents to leave. The next term I want to show you is the degree of a monomial. So all that means it's the sum of the exponents of the variables in the monomial. And that's a lot, but really this is not that complicated once we see these examples. If I look at 7 here, what is the sum of the exponents of the variables? There are no variables here. So this is simply 0. Right here, it looks like we have a variable x, and the exponent is 2. So the sum of the exponents of the variables, that would be a degree of 2. Well, you've got a 2 right here with x, and you've got a 3 right here with y. So the sum of the exponents of the variables is 5. Right here, that's a 1 and that's a 1. You can't really see them. It's like the wind. But this is a 1 for the x. This is a 1 for the y. Finally, the last one right here, you've got 3 for x, you've got 1 for y, you've got 4 for z. That's a total degree of 8. Monomial a number, a variable, or the product of a number and one or more variables. I spelled variables wrong right here. Did you notice that? With whole number exponents. And then finally, the degree of a monomial. That's the sum of the exponents of the variables, or I guess variable, in the monomial. Monomial, we know what that is, I think, by now. I'm not going to say it again. But this is the probably the more important term. All right, a polynomial. This is a monomial or a sum of monomials. Each monomial is called a term of the polynomial. Polynomial with two terms is a binomial. So let's slow down here because there's a lot of words and jargon. I don't know if you ever knew this, but triangles, let's say that this was a equilateral triangle, right? All three sides are equal to each other. We also had a term called an isosceles triangle. And a lot of people think that an isosceles triangle is when the two sides are congruent. But the definition is technically at least two sides are congruent. So this is actually called an isosceles triangle as well. But what I'm getting at is a polynomial is a monomial. Right? A monomial is one specific type of polynomial. But a polynomial can also be a sum of monomials. What do I mean by that? Here's your sum, right? Addition. We've got two different monomials here, 7c and 2. So this would be called a binomial. Bi, of course, means two. We talked about bivariate data in math this year. We've used the term bicycle in everyday vocabulary. Binomial is two terms. And then a polynomial with three terms, well, what's a prefix for three? Hey, we just talked about these guys. It's called a trinomial. So this would be a trinomial. You've got a plus sign and a minus sign, and you've got three terms. And you're probably saying, well, didn't you say the word sum, and isn't this thing right here subtraction, so wouldn't that be a difference? And I guess you're right, but I think by now we know, like, if I was to add 6 plus negative 2, I'm adding that, but I'm getting an answer of 4, so I'm actually finding the difference too. So you can really technically say that with subtraction, since you're adding the opposite, you could say that subtraction, it can technically be classified now as addition if you're adding negatives, right? So that's a trinomial. There's another, what would we call this? Monomial, right? One term. And then this right here, this is a polynomial with, it looks like 4 terms. So it wouldn't be anything pertinent to these words up here. But these are all polynomial examples. All right, so again, we should know a polynomial is a monomial or a sum of monomials. And we've got binomials, we've got trinomials, we've got monomials. The next term that I want you to know is standard form. So when the exponents of the terms decrease from left to right, if I was to go back to this slide right here, you should notice that this is correct for standard form. What I'm saying is the exponents of the terms, right? So this term right here has an exponent of 1, and so that would go first because it has a variable. You can see this one here, it's c cubed is first, and then 7, and then negative 2c. So if I was to write this in standard form, which we're going to get in the habit of doing, I should really write this as c cubed minus 2c plus 7. This one's a monomial, so I don't need to rewrite it. This one, I would just need to rearrange the 10 and the 6x for it to be in standard form. So it would say 6x plus 10, and then the front part of it could stay the same. It would be 7x to the 4th minus 3x squared. Last vocab, a leading coefficient. When you write a polynomial in standard form, the coefficient of the first term is called the leading coefficient. Another way to say it is that that's the coefficient of the term with the highest degree. So what I would invite you to do is pause the video as you start to feel like you get the hang of it and try it on your own. In standard form, this is already good. We've got the variable written first, 5x plus 3, so that's fine in standard form. What type of polynomial is this? Well, we've got one little plus sign there, so we've got a term there and another term right there. 5x and 3 are both terms, so this would be called a binomial. The degree, if you remember, we go back a little ways here, but The degree of a monomial is the sum of the exponents of the variables. So in this case right here, there's only one variable, and that exponent you can't see, so we know that exponent is going to be a 1. So this would be a degree of 1. And the leading coefficient, again, it says the definition up here, and maybe we can make sense of it. It's in standard form, so it's the coefficient of the first term. So the coefficient of the first term is 5, of course, so we can just write 5. The next one, in standard form, well, there's only one term, so it's already written in standard form. The type of polynomial, there's only one, so when it's only one, it's mono. The degree, again, degree means what's the exponent? I guess all the variables summed together, their exponent, that would be 2. And the leading coefficient, there's only one coefficient, would be 6. 3x to the fourth, that's the highest exponent, so we're going to put that first. But we're going to have to rearrange some furniture here. You see 7x squared? I'm going to put that second because the variable has an exponent of 2, and the variable for negative 2x here, the exponent I should say, is just 1. So I'd write negative 2x right there. Now it's in standard form. This seems like it might be over your head. All it is vocab. I'm just listing, you've been doing greatest to least, least to greatest since you were probably in first grade. That's all I did here. I've got a 4, I've got a 2, and you can't see it, but if you want to put it there, I've got a 1. I just put those in order, those exponents from greatest to least, but I had to keep their coefficients with them. The type of polynomial, there's 3 of them there, so that would be a trinomial. And then the degree here. So one more time, I'm going to go back to the definition of degree. Some of the exponents of the variable in the monomial. Tricky definition, but if you look at this last word, in the monomial. For degree here, I am going to take just the 4 because this is a trinomial, so I'm just going to take the degree of the biggest one out of the 3 monomials within this trinomial. So that's a degree of 4, and the leading coefficient, the number that's in front of the train, so to speak, here is a 3. Lastly, I got one more surprise one. This right here in standard form, I was 3 years old. I would just write 3 for standard form. The type of polynomial, this would be a monomial. It's a singular term. You could also call this polynomial, it's a specific type. You could also call it adorable.